Imagine St. Peter's Square immersed in silence, thousands of eyes fixed on a single window, waiting for an announcement about to echo across the planet. When it is finally revealed, that name breaks centuries of tradition, expectations, and predictions. A pope from the United States named Leo XIV. At that moment, something imperceptible changes in the air. A chill runs down the spines of prophecy scholars. A nearly inaudible whisper spreads among the faithful. A question arises in the minds of all those familiar with the ancient writings of Saint Malachy. Is it him? Could the name Leo, associated with a man from the heart of the modern empire, finally fulfill the prophecy of the last pope? The prophecy that mentioned Peter the Roman and the end of the era of the Church as we know it. Today, you will learn this story, but not as it appeared in the newspapers or the official speeches of the Vatican. You will hear the narrative hidden behind the names, titles, applause, and protocols. The story of an ancient prophecy, of an old throne, and of a name that may have arisen to bring them to a close. For centuries, many mocked the prophecy of Saint Malachy. For others, it was always a clue forgotten in time, a list of 112 mottos attributed to popes who had not even been born when the prophecy was recorded. An enigmatic sequence that began in the 11th century with the Irish Archbishop Saint Malachy, only published in 1595. Each motto was a symbol, a clue, a code, and all, or almost all, seemed to make sense. De Mediat Lunae for John Paul I, who died after only 33 days of pontificate during the half-moon of the month. De Labore Solis for John Paul II, born and died under solar eclipses. And the final motto, Petros Romanos, Peter the Roman, a name never adopted, which no pope dared to carry. None until now. Leo XIV is not Peter. But what if he is the symbol of Peter? What if he is the symbolic successor of Peter, the Peter of the New World, Leo XIV? The name carries weight, history, and a powerful symbolic legacy. The last pope to use the name Leo was Leo X, more than 120 years ago, a pontiff deeply connected to eschatological visions and the spiritual battle against evil. It was he who had the famous vision of Satan asking for a century to destroy the church. Leo XIV wrote prayers, decrees, warnings, a pope marked by alerts. Now emerges Leo XIV, a name that not only continues the lineage but renews it with profound geopolitical meaning. Because this time he does not come from Europe, nor from the Italian, French, or Spanish tradition. He comes from America, the new empire of the world, the new center of power. Leo XIV was born in the United States, a land of spiritual paradoxes, of expansive evangelism and moral decadence, of advanced technology and superficiality, of freedom and domination. The church is now led by a man who carries the symbol of the lion and comes from the heart of a globalized civilization. His baptismal name, Robert Francis Prevost, a man with a serene demeanor, calm speech, and a consistent missionary journey. Behind this calm, there is a journey that connects, step by step, with the possibility of a final mission. Robert was a missionary in Peru. He lived among the poor, deeply studied theology and psychology, and always demonstrated a quiet pastoral vocation. Later, he held the position of prefect of the dicastery for bishops. That is, he was directly responsible for the selection and guidance of the Church's new leaders worldwide. He was not just a cardinal, he was the discreet shaper of the new Catholic hierarchy. Now this man takes on the name of a spiritual warrior pope, and with it a new chapter begins, or perhaps the last. For those who study Christian eschatology, the election of a North American pope is not just a modern gesture, it is a sign. North America has been for decades an active agent in globalization, in the advance of cultural ideologies, in the reshaping of power. It is from there that the giants of information, technology and science, and also secularization, emerge. When the Church elects a North American pope, it is recognizing, even indirectly, that the center of the world has shifted, that the modern Rome is elsewhere. And here arises the question that shakes the seminaries and libraries. What if Peter the Roman did not mean merely an Italian man, but the Pope of the new Roman Empire? Of the new Caesars, of the new arenas, of the new gods. The name Peter may not appear in the records, but the name Leo carries a prophetic heritage. In the Bible, the lion represents both divine power and the deception of the adversary. Christ is the lion of the tribe of Judah, but the enemy is also described as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Therefore, the name Leo XIV is not neutral. It awakens profound spiritual memories. At this moment, perhaps more than ever, symbols matter, because the end of times, if we are living in it, will not be marked only by visible events, but by silent signs, chosen names, symbolic decisions. The choice of Robert Francis Prevost as Pope Leo XIV may not seem, at first glance, the fulfillment of Saint Malachy's prophecy. But what if the prophecy was never linear? What if it was always symbolic? What if the last name, Peter the Roman, represents a return to the origins, the faithfulness of the beginning, the final resistance, the leadership in the face of tribulations? The name Leo XIV, coming from a missionary, professor, bishop and builder of the new ecclesiastical generation, may be exactly that. A Peter hidden in the lion, a Roman born on foreign soil, an end camouflaged as a new beginning. We are facing a new cycle, but perhaps it is not a cycle of renewal. Perhaps it is a cycle of closure. Perhaps we are witnessing the first day of the last pontificate. And if you think this idea is absurd, remember, all prophecies seemed absurd until they happened. Before being Leo XIV, before wearing the white, before stepping onto the balcony and gazing at the world from atop St. Peter's Basilica, he was just Robert, an American boy born on September 14th, 1955, in the city of Chicago, in the midst of the urban fervor of a transforming America. At that time, no one imagined that the soil that would one day generate a superpower would also give the Catholic Church a pope. The story of Robert Francis Prevost is born from a calling that pulled him from Western comfort and led him to the forgotten margins of global faith. Robert joined the Order of St. Augustine, one of the oldest and most influential congregations of the Church, and there he immersed himself not only in theological studies but in the missionary spirit. His superiors soon realized that he carried something unusual, not just intelligence or discipline, but a rare combination of deep empathy and doctrinal firmness. It was this combination that led him to Peru, a land marked by poverty, internal conflicts, and a people thirsty for authentic spirituality. Prevost spent more than a decade in the outskirts of Lima, living among the humble, learning their language, their customs, their pain. There, among barefoot children and forgotten elders, he understood the true meaning of shepherding the flock amid tribulations. But his journey did not end in the slums of Peru. Back in the United States, he was appointed Prior Provincial of the Augustinians and later Superior General of the Order in Rome. In the city of the Seven Hills, he discreetly followed the path that would place him among the most influential names in the global church. Curiously, unlike many other cardinals, Prevost avoided the spotlight. He rarely gave interviews. His sermons were profound but brief. His posture was always reserved. Still, the most important figures sought him out because he carried something that many had lost: spiritual authority without institutional arrogance. In 2023, he was appointed by Pope Francis as prefect of the dicastery for bishops. In other words, he became the man responsible for evaluating, appointing, and guiding bishops around the world. If the church were an orchestra, he was the one who selected the musicians, and often the one who tuned the instruments. This strategic position under the direct leadership of the Pope transformed Prevost into the silent architect of the church. Few knew, but it was he who was shaping its future, and ironically, perhaps he himself was the hidden name in that future. During his years leading the dicastery, Leo XIV, still as a cardinal, made discreet but profound decisions. He sent bishops with pastoral profiles to regions marked by doctrinal conflicts. He encouraged more rigorous spiritual formation without abandoning compassion. He rejected appointments with political or media bias and firmly defended the evangelizing mission over institutional disputes. This stance earned him silent support from part of the Curia and suspicion from factions that expected a more progressive or more conservative profile. Prevost was neither one nor the other. He was a man of mission. Perhaps that is why he was chosen. The conclave that elected him was tense, say those who were near the Vatican corridors. The Italians were divided. The Africans formed a respected but still discreet bloc, and the Latin Americans had lost strength after turbulent decades. The North Americans united, not to elect a political pope, but a pastor, a mediator, someone who knew the ground of the periphery and knew how to walk through the marble of the Vatican. The choice of the name Leo XIV was no accident. Everyone knew that by choosing this name, Robert Francis Prevost was invoking the legacy of Leo XIV, one of the most mystical popes of modern history. It was Leo XIV who had the vision of Satan asking for 100 years to destroy the church, and who responded by creating the prayer to Saint Michael the Archangel, still recited today by the faithful in moments of spiritual battle. By assuming this name, Prevost seemed to say, the battle has reached the end of its cycle, or worse, it is about to truly begin. And here the narrative shifts in tone and begins to intertwine with the prophecy. Even if the new pope is not named Peter, even if he was not born in Rome, the symbol that surrounds him fulfills all the central elements of the prophetic enigma. He shepherds the flock amid tribulations. He comes from the new global empire. He adopts the name of the lion, and he presents himself as the leader of a confused, divided, persecuted, and weary flock. The lingering question is, could Peter the Roman be a symbol of the final pastoral spirit? An echo of the first Peter, returning, with another name but the same mission. Looking at the history of the Church, we realize that names carry more than tradition. They carry prophetic intention. And perhaps the name Leo XIV is saying something that few dare to hear. The era of spiritual battle has reached its climax. While many expected a media-savvy pope, an innovator, or someone aligned with socio-political movements, a discreet man emerged, but with the name of someone who saw the devil act and prepared to fight him. Along came Leo XIV, the silent shepherd, the invisible mediator, the new face of Peter, or perhaps the last. For centuries, the prophecy of Saint Malachy was treated as a footnote curiosity, something for eccentrics, relegated more to conspiracy blogs than to seminaries. But now it has returned to center stage. And for one simple reason. The world has changed, and with it, the Church as well. The rise of Leo XIV, a pope with an apocalyptic name coming from the secularized West, seems to have awakened more than doctrinal debates. It awakened the memory of the end, and the feeling that perhaps the clock is already ticking in its final minutes. The prophecy describes the last pope as the one who will feed the flock amid many tribulations. And if we are not living that, now when will we be? After that, says the prophecy, the city of the 7 hills will be destroyed. The judge will appear and everything will end, or begin again. But perhaps the crucial point is not about him. It's about you. The prophecy fulfills itself for the watchful, for those with lamps lit, for those who keep the oil of faith when the whole world plunges into darkness. Maybe Leo XIV is the last. Maybe not. But what matters is that the story has changed. The spiritual atmosphere is no longer the same. The white smoke came out of the Sistine Chapel, but it is also rising over the global scene. Signs are piling up, names are falling into place, silences are becoming deafening, and the question remains, are you ready? If this message spoke to your heart, don't stop here. Subscribe to the channel, Knowing the Word, and activate the notification bell to dive even deeper into the mysteries, stories, and prophecies that shape our faith.